all of a sudden, Nick starts running down the hill. I'm like, oh, geez, I hope he doesn't sprain his ankle or something. I'm going to have to carry him off the mountain. But it was a great time. We had a great experience seeing the top of Colorado. And even though I have long legs, he beat me down the mountain. I beat him up the mountain. So it's all even. But we had a great time together. But yeah, today we're going to talk about how small data can make a really big difference in your community. And in 2015, as the token recreation guy in the room, I had the fortunate opportunity of leading Instant Recess. Anybody in that room that day remember throwing the football? No? Oh, well, that's too bad. We had a great time, and so hopefully I'll have a good time today. Any other Parks and Recreation people in the room? Yes, that's what I thought. Only Slater and I. So I know all you future city managers out there, please take note of who's in the room for Parks and Recreation. If you need a future director, Slater and I understand this, right? And like we heard earlier today, you need more of this, and Slater and I can provide it for your Parks and Recreation department. Slater, you owe me a 20 later. Okay. But so throughout my career in Parks and Recreation, one of the things that I've struggled with is that Parks and Recreation does a really bad job of talking about data, right? Like you'll hear the story about the kid on the playground and how they created this meaningful relationship with this adult, and that somehow prevented that person from doing a crime. Well, at the end of the day, you go to the city manager, and he says, great story, Justin, show me the data, right? And so my whole point of this presentation of what we do in the City of Westminster is how do we show the data? How do we prove, show me the numbers, prove it to me, right? And I think that's really important when you think about not just Parks and Recreation, but government as a whole. Because I constantly hear from my colleagues, man, we're getting cut because the fire department, they need the hoses. The police department, they need the guns. Well, the police department, you kind of got to agree with them because they have the guns and you don't want to irritate those people. But, the fire department, they save ducks, they save kittens, and sometimes they save a life. So, we'll give them that, right? But at the end of the day, this really hit home for me in 2000 when I started with the city of Gresham. I ended up working with a gentleman named Phil, and I won't use his last name. He doesn't work there anymore. But really, Phil is a really relevant story to this conversation. So I started as an administrative analyst. Anybody else in the room analysts? It's kind of that catch-all title, yep. So I started there, and the first day, we went to coffee at Seattle's Best Coffee right over by the city hall there. And then the second day, we went to coffee. And then the third day, we went to coffee. And we spent 20 or 30 minutes at coffee. And I started to wonder, is this what it's like at the City of Gresham? We always go have coffee and hang out. And it was myself and these two other landscape architects. And so kind of to Alan's point, I started seeing this good old boy system. And then Phil would come to me and say, hey, can you do my Excel spreadsheets? Damn right I can. I know Excel. And so I did Phil's Excel spreadsheets. What quickly happened is in 2008, the recession hit, Parks and Recreation. We don't have any money to build more parks. We don't need landscape architects. And unfortunately, Phil was let go. And I really believe that part of it was because he didn't stay relevant. He didn't understand that he needed to do his own Excel spreadsheets, that he needed to stay relevant with this type of information. And so my biggest thing to you is don't be Phil, right? Stay current, do the right thing, look at data, make the right choice, make the data-driven choice sometimes. Even though it may not be popular, you have to do the right thing, and you have to stay current. Because when I'm sitting in a room with my staff, and they say, Justin, why are we doing this continuous improvement stuff? This doesn't make sense. How does this apply to my job? I said, well, I don't want you to be like Phil. Because Phil didn't stay relevant. Phil didn't learn Excel. Phil didn't know CAD. Could you imagine a landscape architect or an architect today that doesn't know CAD? No, they're unheard of because they don't have a job, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing is data is the future. And if in Parks and Recreation, if I don't know how to use data to make decisions, I will be like Phil. So don't be like Phil, if you get anything, right? So you may have seen this diagram, plan, do, study, act. And I kind of thought about, what are the ways that I can frame my presentation? I want to impress people or talk about Parks and Rec, and Slater and I, we got to represent. So I thought a plan, do, study, act as being a really good framework for how we address different problems. And in the City of Westminster, specifically in the Recreation Division, Sarah made a really good point. This isn't the City of Westminster. This is really the Recreation Division within the City of Westminster. Because as Sarah said, you got to focus on what you have control over. And I didn't ask for permission. I didn't go to my boss and say, hey, I'd like to do this continuous improvement thing. Hey, I'd like to buy this HappyOrNot device. Because luckily, it's under the $7,500 threshold, so I don't have to bid it out. I don't have to do all these other things. You know, it's not $7,499. Luckily, this solution for us only cost $3,300. But it was really important to make sure that I had control and influence over what I was doing. And so that's why we started this journey. And we really started with the plan. You know, what do we want to accomplish? We looked at the problem. We looked at issues of accountability. You know, people were holding on to kind of the old way of doing things. They really didn't have a justification for why they were doing something. Sometimes bathrooms would go unclean. We have these things called walkthroughs in our recreation facilities, and sometimes they get done, sometimes they wouldn't. Staff schedules were off a little bit. Staff engagement was pretty low. Previous leadership within our area was very autocratic, very authoritarian, and so there wasn't a lot of interest in providing new ideas or celebrating kind of what we had accomplished. Staff morale was a little bit low. People didn't know where they stood with leadership or management. You know, to Heather's point about, you know, the manager needs to be present, they need to be talking, they need to be engaging their frontline employees. And so also we had lack of information. And yesterday, I forget who it was, we were at the What Works. Yeah, this gentleman over here, he talked about anecdata, right? How many times have you had somebody come to you and say, well, you know, I saw this, and, you know, therefore this is what's happening. And you think, oh, yeah, okay, that sounds credible. And so you go off of that feeling or that gut reaction. And so oftentimes we did this in Parks and Recreation or in the Recreation Division. We'd make decisions based on anecdata. So hopefully I'm saying that right. Is that anecdata? Okay, good. And then cost, right? How many of you come into a problem and you immediately think, I need a survey, I need to focus group it, I need to hire a consultant, right? But you may not be solving, or all three. Yeah, all three, Heather. Yeah. Dilly. Yeah, so you got to do all three. And I think that's a really difficult part, too, is if you're constantly chasing your tail to address problems that are identified through anecdata, you're going to spend a lot of money. And what if it's not even a problem? How are you going to find that out? And so one of the things that we used was we ended up coming to this conclusion that we wanted to gather incremental data that is time-based of leading indicators of satisfaction, right? So for instance, if our goal was we want our customers to come to our recreation centers and we want them to have a really amazing experience, one in which they are able to recreate their bodies through our Zumba classes or, you know, find better experiences through pottery or better meaning in life through our Tai Chi programs, you know, we need to be understanding what are the indicators of satisfaction before we get to that overall satisfaction number. We need to know that if the bathroom's not clean, they aren't going to be happy, right? Because when you go into a dirty bathroom that says, I don't care, it doesn't matter, and I want you to get cooties. And so I think it's really important that to have a clean bathroom helps people prepare to have that enlightened experience when they are able to achieve wellness in your recreation center. So we look at leading indicators of satisfaction, not lagging, which is overall satisfaction, which is important, but we want to look at leading indicators that we can then control. Because I know that if I spend more time in the bathroom cleaning it, that people are going to be more satisfied, and that's really important to me. So there's a couple ways to do this, and we looked at different options. At first we thought, hey, we could do check marks, right? We could do little tick marks, and you can do this too. You don't need to spend what I spent. See, you can save yourself $3,300. Like, you just did it right here. Just use these tick marks. Stick it at your front door. You can have, are you happy or are you not? You know, please rate your overall satisfaction. Put a sticker on the chart, and you can start tomorrow. Literally, you can start tomorrow doing this. You can use sticky notes like Sarah was talking about. However, we decided to go a little more high-tech, and we bought this device, which has been great. You may have seen this at IKEA. I first saw this at the Seattle International Airport, and I thought, man, that's cool. How do I make this happen? And then I started talking to some people in Kettering, Ohio, Stacy, Kettering, Ohio, and we had a real good conversation about their Parks and Recreation department, and they kind of tipped me off to how they implement it in Parks and Recreation. It's become really helpful for us, and that's what I want to talk a little bit more about. And so what we did is we bought one device, we put it at one site, kind of this idea of do. We tested it out, right? We had it at one site, our City Park Fitness Center, and the first question we asked was, please rate the overall satisfaction of our facility. And we hit 98%. which we were really excited about. We thought, okay, maybe we'll get like 80, maybe we'll get, 85%, but we achieved 98% user satisfaction at our City Park Fitness Center, which is pretty phenomenal for us. And we were really excited about that. So what we did is we celebrated, we had a little party with the staff, we gave out kudos, really thanked them for being there. And then we moved it throughout our facility. We tested our childcare, because we offer childcare as part of our recreation experience. We tested it out in our bathrooms, and then that led to the purchase of this new handy-dandy bathroom equipment, because what we found is that a mop spreads germs all over the floor and kind of spreads the dirt, right? So we bought this new vacuum mopper. You can like scrub and mop, and it has a little hose on it at the recommendation of our custodian. Since then, we've been able to improve our bathroom scores. We even tested our music, and I'll talk a little bit about this later as some of the benefits of how the data helped us to thwart some citizen complaints. And then we've even used this to test the temperature in our yoga studio, because you wouldn't believe how picky yoga people get about the temperature, right? And so sometimes it's really fascinating what people latch onto. So we did a lot of different experiments, and this is what the chart looks like. So this is, it gives you Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of down the line. It gives you your happy or not. So this is please rate your overall experience. So we were able to achieve, this is 96%. We had 1,600 respondents over the course of a couple weeks. It's really easy to see. This comes to my email box every day, so you may consider this spam. I consider it data. It can be really helpful. You can see this nice curve. Also, it ties in with the Net Promoter Score, if any of you use the Net Promoter Score for your organization, so it's been really helpful. But I get that I'm not talking to a room of Parks and Recreation people, so maybe this isn't connecting with you. So I thought, what are other questions that I could suggest that you maybe use in your community? And so I came up with a couple for you. One is, please rate the satisfaction with the duck extraction. So, as a fire department, this may be something you want to consider. Maybe please rate the level of happiness with your recent code violation. Right? You could have this little button thing on the back of your truck. As the person's handing out code violations, they can hit red, green, or dark red. Please pick your favorite stoplight color. Light green, light red, dark red, right, for the transportation. Please rate the level of satisfaction with the level of the length of the meeting this evening, right? Imagine if we had this outside of council meetings. We'd really begin to understand whether or not people were satisfied with the length of the meeting. I also thought about putting up here, please rate the satisfaction of the city attorney's office, or, as a joke, I wanted to go around the city and just put our Happy or Not device, ironically, in front of other departments as a joke, but I didn't think that'd be a really good move, so I didn't do that. So what I'd like you to do now is pull out your phones. We're going to try and blow up Happy or Not's Twitter account right now, and so if you could tweet out your favorite survey question. It doesn't have to be mine, obviously, but pick a survey question that you think would be either funny or not funny, and that you would want to ask through, if you were to use this Happy or Not device in your community. And then Cartograph, they have some T-shirts, and the survey question that gets the most likes, or the little heart buttons on your Twitter thing, will win a T-shirt. We have up to 3 T-shirts, so please do that now, and I'll keep talking. And also hashtag anecdata, because I think this helps us thwart anecdata, which is like a syndrome. So again, back to this little diagram, we're going to talk about studies. So what we found once we began to study this idea of the Happy or Not device was it boosted morale. People immediately saw how customers felt about their level of satisfaction. It became a point of pride. I had this impact. I created this change. I, as a yoga teacher, made this difference in this person's life. For the first time, I didn't have to rely on a SurveyMonkey survey or a paper survey they had to wait weeks for. I was able to tell that instructor that day that they were 100%. And that means a lot to a staff person. Imagine if every day your boss came in and said, you're doing a great job, way to go, 100%. That's a little bit of a kind of a loose comment, but imagine getting a 100% score. That would make you feel good if you knew that people that come into your class are that satisfied. Also, it increased engagement. For the first time, I found a role in Parks and Recreation for all the data geeks in my division. I could give them this tool, and I said, hey, you come up with the questions. You pick what you want to test. You pick what you want to study. And it became something personal for them that they could own, that they could work on, and that they could use to really leverage their own data fascinations. And it was really powerful. Also, we began shifting employees' schedules. we found that our bathrooms weren't very clean between the hours of 4 and 6 o'clock at night. We found that even after 10 o'clock, when our night custodians were there and they ended up bringing their kids, they kept hitting the red button. So we had to have a conversation with our contractor. We also found that, sometimes there's a little delay, allows for 3 seconds. So if you hit it, faster or slower, then you might, skew the results. But it's information that really helped us look at the cleanliness of our bathrooms, and then we shifted custodian schedules in order to impact that number. But absent this little small piece of data that can either be done on a check sheet or a HappyOrNot device, it really made a difference for our people. And then even that, we had data to refute customer complaints. How often does somebody come to you and say, there's a lot of people that, fill in the blank, anecdata, right? And you immediately jump to, oh my God, what am I going to do? The city manager is going to call me, the mayor is going to call me, this council person is going to call me because they are hearing from a lot of people. Well, we had a situation where a gentleman, he emailed me and he said, I filled out several comment cards about your music. Your music sucks at your recreation center. Yes, Parks and Recreation was pretty realistic, and that's why I didn't watch that show, because it was a little too close to home. But yes, it was a Parks and Recreation moment. This guy's like, I want to hear more oldies on your radio station, because we have this radio station that plays in our rec center, and we run ads on it about our different programs, and this guy was just irritated. So I said, okay, sir, I appreciate your comments. Well, let me look at the data. Let's get the data, right? So I looked at it, and I kind of had a feeling, because I kind of felt like our music sucked too. And so I had my staff test it. Like, how bad is our music? Is it really that bad, and what do our customers think? Well, I was wrong. I fell to the anecdata idea, and I was wrong about our music. And 86% of our users of our rec centers like the music. So that's pretty good, right? So I took that information, and I sent this gentleman. I said, dear sir, thank you for your time. We appreciate your comments, all the nice things you have to say when people complain. And I wrote, based on the data, we found that 86% of people like our current music mix. However, in looking at the overall mix of our music, I do see that we aren't providing any oldies at this time, and we're going to increase the oldies in our music mix by 5%. So he sent me this email. Now, if I didn't have the data, do you think he'd send me that email? How often do you get this email? Never, right? Alan, do the bridge people send you this email? No, okay. Exactly, and so because we had the information, I was able to but help this gentleman understand the data behind our decision making. Yes, we have 20% classic rock because that's what people like. We don't want to have 10% Yanni, no offense to the Yanni fans in the room, because people need to be doing the treadmill. They're doing the elliptical machine. Now, my wife, she kind of listens to some different music, and it's funny when she's like, oh, yeah, I listen to this song. I'm like, really, on the treadmill? But, we like to keep people active and happy at the recreation center. But absent the data, we would have jumped through a bunch of hoops, done focus groups, done all of this work to make this one person happy based on the fact that he believes he submitted 10 comment cards through our little comment card box, and nobody responded to him. But when I was able to show him the data, it really helped make a difference. And so what have we done since? How have we multiplied this in our community? Well, we've deployed this across all of our recreation centers, which helps us to get comparable data. So now we can look at different recreation centers. We can look at how this one does over this one, and look at the staff, and that can then become a coaching tool. And real quick about continuous improvement. Remember, we always use this as a flashlight to highlight positive change. We don't use it as a stick to beat people over the head. And so I think the same thing stands true with HappyOrNot. We use this as a flashlight to highlight people doing good work. We don't use it as a discipline tool. Now, if my bathroom is dirty, we look at it and say, hey, what can we do to make this better? We do encourage the person to change, but it's a conversation about how do we get better, not how are you doing bad, and let's shame this individual. So I think that's really important here. So it gives us comparable data. It creates autonomy and creativity. Staff are testing various things across all the different centers. Some people use it to test this thing. Some people use it to test this thing. And this has really changed the conversation in our division. So now I'll be sitting in a meeting, and somebody will say, hey, there's a lot of people that, And immediately, somebody will stand up in the room and say, show me the data. And it's funny now, people are really challenging each other, and you have to be prepared. But still, we aren't perfect by any means. But we need to get better, right? We need to start with that one point. What is that one step you're going to do? And I think before we run out of time, I would ask that you turn, and maybe on your sheet of paper, or on your cell phone, or tweet out, to those tweeter people in the room, tweet out what is the one thing you're going to do when you get back that you're going to start because of this presentation today, right? Every single one of us has talked about taking that first step. So what's that first step going to be for you? And I recommend you put it on Twitter, because then all your Twitter people can hold you accountable, right? But start with what one step. Also start small. Notice that we started at one rec center with one device. We didn't go out and buy 50 of them, and I recommend that you don't go out and buy 50 of them just based on this presentation. Buy one, start small. God forbid, just start with a pad of paper and a Sharpie. I can let you borrow one of mine if you need a Sharpie too. And also, decisions still happen without data. I'm guilty of this. As a matter of fact, last week, I made a decision without data. And I got burned by it. So I won't share you the whole convoluted story about how that happened, but don't do it. It's bad, and it can get worse. So yes, start with the data. And don't just start with one point. I think somebody else said this today. Don't start with that one point, because I think sometimes we can get stuck. Oh, yeah, I checked the data. I looked at one point. Well, okay, great. You looked at one point. Well, what about the 10 other points? And that's really what happened to me in my situation. Is I looked at one point, made a decision based on one point, didn't make a decision based on maybe 5 or 6 points that would have helped me better inform that one point. And I think that's what I would challenge you with as well. Kind of the next step for us in this whole process is looking at what Hayward, California is doing. They're doing some research around customer journey, really asking what are the pain points that customers are experiencing when they're going to acquire government services. So if you're interested, look up Hayward, California, Move the Needle. They're doing great work around this whole customer experience. And specifically within Parks and Rec, we have a lot of customers and a lot of people that are coming to our rec centers, and we want to make sure that we're providing the best experience. And funny thing, I had on my staff call at least 5 people in there that have acquired their services in the last year and ask them, what is the biggest pain point along your journey? And we had this real argument about pain, but we chose the word pain because it doesn't assign blame and it doesn't assign shame, right? It's just, was this painful or not, yes or no? And so check them out. They're doing great work. And then also enjoy the ride. Have fun with this. Make sure that you celebrate your employees. Make sure that you're congratulating them when they hit 100%. Have a party. Make it fun. Don't just focus on when you get like 64% on your men's restroom. Like focus on the 100% and be proud of that and share that with other people. Because you're going to have city council that's going to come to you and say, well, how do you know you have 100% satisfaction? Or how do you know people like your rec centers? And now we have a story that we can tell through our data. And that's why we do this, and that's why we continue to move forward at the City of Westminster. So thank you for your time today. I know that we have questions coming up. Again, remember to tweet out Anecdata, ELGL, HappyOrNot.com. I know they have a long Twitter handle. I can't, I don't endorse that, but yeah, make it short and sweet. That's why I did hashtag. Early up here, I had hashtag HON. Yeah, maybe they can borrow that. So, but thank you for being here today, and thank you for listening to our presentations, and continue to enjoy the conference. And Nick's going to come up and do questions.